What is up, guys, and welcome back to the RTU podcast, the Rethinking the Unthinkable podcast. It's been a while, a month and a half, maybe two, but we are back. I'm joined with Brennan, the brand new co-host of the show, and we are kicking off the second episode, the official second episode of the podcast. If you guys are wondering what happened to the other second episode, go and listen to the update that's coming out before this. We explain everything, even the big hiatus that we were gone for 2 months. But in some of those changes, I'm joined by Brennan now officially. So me and him are going to be working together on the podcast from here on out. Hope you guys enjoy. On this episode, we are going to be talking about mental health a little bit more in depth. Kind of just hanging out and talking. It might not be a full hour long. We got some things to get done today, but we have gotten all these podcasts out, update and everything for you guys to keep you guys, in the loop. So, we're going to kick it off going into the podcast. All right. We're going to start with a sponsor and we'll kick it off. All right. Talk to you guys later. Bye. All right. So today, like we mentioned in the update, we couldn't necessarily use the whole second episode. So we were just going to talk about a couple of the clips. And the main clip that I wanted to talk about, I'm going to show here in a minute. But we were talking about mental health a little bit in regards to the story about Brennan's past relationship. But, I recently, I think a year or two, found out that I was depressed, but it shows itself differently because it's not your traditional down in the dumps all the time. And Brennan and I just kind of had a quick moment of talking about how it's different for different people. So I'm going to show the clip real fast and then we're going to get into it, all right? Real quick, I forgot to, when you say that, I forgot about the mental thing that she had going on. Similar to me, which I found out later in my, journey at that time. She was depressed for a lot longer and knew about it and everything and was trying to get help. Or I don't know if she. I don't know.
She was at that time. She was not necessarily trying to get help. I was trying to, but you can't
make
somebody get help.
Yeah. Right.
She did try it, but she didn't like it.
Right.
So she stopped.
So I was gonna say, because I remember when we were friends, she didn't really seem like she wanted to get help for it.
Right. She didn't seem like she wanted help, and from someone who I've recently found out, like in the last year or two, that I was in a similar place, it just didn't hit me the same, because apparently, this may be obvious to some of the viewers, I'm sorry, I'm still learning these things, but apparently men and women have depression on different levels, and so as a male going through depression...
I did not know.
You didn't know that? Yeah, okay, thank you, then I'm not the only one.
Guys, it's more like...
Is it a different...
anger issues and like,
Okay, so it presents itself differently.
Yeah.
Right, and it affects the person, male or female, differently.
Yeah.
So for me, in my instance, yes, I do have those gloomy days, but really, my depression more hits me in the fact that I'm irritable and anxious more.
Like he'll snap.
Okay, whereas in
really
women
easily.
will shut down more necessarily.
With women, yeah, like my wife, if she's going through a really tough time, or even especially, and I remember this very clearly with Sophie, especially she would have really bad days, and I know you can speak for that too, where it would be a long period of time where shut down, nothing gets done, silence, all that stuff. She just closed everything out.
It didn't talk to anybody.
Right.
It was very rare.
And now with that clip is, I still stand by it, is I did not know that it presents itself. Well, I guess I should have known that people aren't going to experience it in the same levels, but I didn't know gender-based that it was affected differently.
Yeah, yes and no.
Or is that just a part of people experiencing it differently?
It's common that males and females experience it differently, yes. Although male depression is extremely high, that's why it's so high, is because most common times we don't know that we're depressed.
Okay.
And it's obviously like with a male, it's like, oh, you're just feeling down in the dumps, be a man and get over it. That's common. That's why depression's so high.
Now,
and so,
because that's what I was going to ask. Now, is it high in males because of that, saying, oh, you just have to be a man, this, that? man up per se.
No, I don't think it's because of that. I think it's because of the responsibility and the roles that we play. Not saying that women have lesser roles than us, but think about it. Males are supposed to be the head of the house. We're supposed to protect. We're supposed to provide the most money. There's a lot of things that are common to this day and age that is on our shoulders.
You can look at it nowadays as in, like, they're wanting to change that.
Oh, yeah, 100%. It's just, that's a common statistic that usually pops up. So, like, with that responsibility, if you think about it, it makes sense, with that much responsibility, that much pressure put on you by the culture and just maybe by yourself. Like, for me, I put a lot of pressure on myself. You tend to get bogged down and you have side effects of it, and that might be depression, or that might be some mental illness because you're, trying to do everything, but you're just one person, That's why today's day and age is realizing, okay, maybe we're pushing males or people into that place.
So is this something that, excuse my ignorance on it, but I mean, I've never dealt with it personally, and is it something that, like, occurs over time and eventually you develop it, or is it something that while you were going through your development stage, you just kind of get it?
And see, that's where I'm a little bit in the dark on it. So for me, I can only talk from my point of view. For me, after I found out that it really was a thing, that I did have depression, I can look back 5, 6, 7, years back in junior high, where I saw where it started, where it began, and how it developed, and it became a bigger and bigger issue. Okay. I was bullied as a kid, very commonly. I struggled with an identity crisis, not knowing if I was black or white. A lot of those things compounded with my self-image and confidence, that I realized that after going through some of that stuff, I started to kind of shut down in certain areas. And as a kid, I was traditionally depressed. But then as I pushed that down and went through it and was like, you're a man, you can't be sad. You can't do that all the time. I pushed it down. And then come high school and becoming an adult, I can see where it developed again, where it went from being sad all the time to having mood swings. And then it bled into my relationship at the time in high school with a girl I'd been dating for, 2-some years, where we almost broke up several times because I was going through something emotionally and frustratingly that I just wanted to end it all and just walk away from it. But it's hard to control it at that point. So I would say that something probably would cause it physically, but then a lot of it comes with the development stage as well. I think it begins early, honestly, I think.
Okay, but
also
it can be helped and pushed through. I mean, like you said, problems with school, other people.
Yeah, like I was bullied, then it was also my own weight, my own stuff that I was dealing with and growing up. But also you have to think about it too, is it's also partly genetic too, because there's a chemical imbalance as well. My mother was chronically depressed, and my brother, so naturally that chemical imbalance comes through the line and it comes down to me as well. So it's really a culmination of a lot of different aspects that I don't know if I'm necessarily the right one to speak on, but like I said, we're here to figure it out, because with it being genetic, but also a product of what you go through in life, how men overall tend to be high in depression, I think it's such a shocking statistic because of the role that men play. Like, we push it down. We don't talk about our emotions often.
Yeah.
So
I'm a big factor in that. I think knowing me in high school especially helps, because I never showed any emotions whatsoever.
Well, right, exactly. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be stoic. We're supposed to be the leaders. We're supposed to hold that stuff in.
I've had that forever, and it's only just recently, and I'm sure you can see it now, where I'm starting to express more.
Right.
It's still hidden.
Well, absolutely, and that's where I think the first problem might be, not necessarily saying that you're wrong, because it's natural. That's what we do. That's how we're taught to be like, but it's like, that's where it starts, is that bottling it up and pushing it down and not expressing it. It starts with the expression to help get it better. Because when I found out that I had the problem, was when I was working at Chick-fil-A still. When I realized it was a problem was when I was in a relationship that was helping me get better, but then I realized I didn't have the capacity to get better because of my emotional instability.
Okay.
And so my wife was caring and patient enough to point out when these things started happening and reoccurring. And when I was able, because of her help, when I was able to understand that it was recurring and it happened a lot, I realized how crazy it made me seem. And so after being able to take a step back and see it from an outside perspective, that's when I realized I had the problem. But it's hard to get out of that mindset because it's something how you've always been for years. For me, I was always that way, from happy to sad, and I'm used to that. Because I was that way, I didn't think it was anything wrong. I thought it was just part of my personality. When it comes to with my wife, when I went from happy to sad to mad, she pointed out, hey, this is something so small. Why is it becoming such a big deal? Do you think you might have some things that you might need to work out? And she did it much, nicer and more gentle. But I was like, oh, my family's been like this, but I never had that. But then looking into it, I was like, no, oh shit, I do have that really bad. And, that's where therapy comes in and medicine comes in. And therapy hasn't always worked with me. I think it could if I gave it a little bit more time. But really what helped me the most was the medicine, because I think it genuinely is a chemical imbalance for me. It's not always the same with other people. But the medicine that I got, I was so freaking lucky that I didn't have to go through 15 different medications to find the right one. They suggested Cymbalta, which is a very common one that is kind of like think of it like an incomplete puzzle. And it's a puzzle of chemicals. And I might just be missing one, or one is just not, it's not a full piece to fit that space. And what that medicine does is put another piece to go with it to make it a full piece and fill that space in the empty puzzle. And voila, you've got the perfect chemical balance, or, it kind of fills that space where you were lacking. And because Cymbalta is so overall, helps with so many different things, it helped me with my depression, but it also helps my mom, who is depressed, but it helps her with her fibromyalgia as well. It's a pain medicine. That Cymbalta is like a really good medicine for covering multiple bases. And it just so happens that because it was common, it's a very good one. That was the first one I tried, and it's been what I've been using since, and it helps out a lot. But that's not always the case, And I think...
So when you go in to do something like that, and they suggest this medicine, do they not necessarily know 100% that it's like, okay, well, this is... so it's normally a trial and error kind of basis.
That's exactly where...
Now, what if you get the wrong one, how does that affect you?
So, going down... With mental health, when it comes to mental health, it's really hard to pinpoint something like that. It really is. Without proper testing. Now, my dad, because of his potential for being bipolar and kind of like a volatile bipolar, he underwent a lot of testing before they went into medicine. Because that's a very big, serious kind of mental health issue. That's kind of where you see different degrees of the mental health illnesses, anxiety, depression, bipolar. Each one is treated differently. And it has to be, because each one is unique. With depression, I didn't have to go into any testing. All I did was tell her what I was going through, and she's like, that's probably what it is.
Okay.
Because she's well-knowledge. The doctors are usually well-knowledge with that. Same thing with anxiety. Same thing with ADHD. You can tell them what you're going through. They can pretty accurately pinpoint it. But with bipolar, there's so many different variations of it. My dad had to undergo testing after testing to figure out what degree he was in, and then they figured out the medicine. And even when you figure out what medicine that you want to use for that degree, he had to trial and error through each one. Now, they have to really just pick one and then monitor his responses and monitor his side effects. Same thing with depression usually. I got lucky. It's never that lucky with other people. It really isn't. That's the reason why Sam stopped taking medicine. Is because when they take the medicine, they give you one, and they're like, okay, you had what kind of side effects? Nausea, sickness, okay, we'll bench that one. Try another one. This one made you more suicidal. We're never going to go back to this one. Another one, you feel drowsy, you're kind of cloudy, you don't feel like yourself. We're going to bench that one. And they go through each one. And then the ones that you benched, even though they give you maybe some side effects that you don't want, you might have to go back there and just deal with the cloudiness or the drowsiness or something like that. Maybe not the nausea, and that's not usually what you want. But like if it makes you feel out of yourself, but it stops your depression symptoms, sometimes that's better than having the depression symptoms. So for Sam, the reason why she stopped taking medicine was because the only medicine that worked for her after she went through years of trial and error, which sucks, it really does. Mm-hmm. The one that she finally got was one that just didn't make her feel good. It made her drowsy. It made her cloudy. It didn't make her feel very
Like herself.
Yeah. It took her out of herself, but it stopped her anxiety. So eventually, through therapy, that's why therapy is involved too. When you take medicine, they want you to be in therapy as well. Because they have to monitor you as well.
Yeah.
That's where her therapy came in, and they're like, okay, this medicine obviously isn't what you want to stay on, so let's give you the tools that you need mentally to work through that anxiety, to get you out of it quicker, to help you deal with it better.
Okay.
And that coaching eventually allowed her to get off of that medicine. And she uses the tools now that she had with the therapy to be able to get through those things. So she still deals with it. She's not cured of it. You never are cured of it, but she works with it better.
Because it never really goes away.
No,
right?
it doesn't.
So you just always have to kind of stick with those things that you learn to help.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and for me, like that's why it's bad for me being a depressive. It's bad for me to say that I don't like therapy because I'm only doing half of the work. I'm only taking medicine. I'm not even trying therapy. If I tried therapy, I wouldn't have to take the medicine, but I love the medicine so much because it's working that I don't want to do the therapy, and I don't want to take the time to go through all that because it's, to me, I find it redundant. I don't like people picking around in my brain type of thing. But at the same time, my parents talk it up all the time. It sounds like it really has helped them a lot. I probably should do it. It's just something that I've struggled with for a while now. But if I can get that therapy, then boom, I don't need the medicine. And I could stop taking medicine every day because I hate taking the medicine. But it works so well that I love it. But I forget to take it every other day because it's redundant. I don't like taking medicine every morning. Mm-hmm. And when I don't take it, that's where I have those blow-ups. As soon as I don't take it, either a day later or a day or two, I can feel the gap in the doses. And it's usually a bad day, and Sam wants to rip my head off. But
now, was that kind of like when we were moving? Was that kind of when you saw you kind of come down from it a little? Okay.
Yeah. So for the context of the listeners, when I was helping, it was helping you move, right? Or was it me?
No,
moving?
we were helping. Oh
you yeah, it was helping me move. Yeah, I remember that day now. Yeah. We were moving because in the update I explained that me and Brennan both moved, and we were moving back in with my family. And it's not what I want to do, obviously, but my family's nice enough, and they just got a new house to allow us to stay in a room with them. And in the process of the moving, obviously everyone's helping me do this. It's kind of last minute. We had to do it in a hurry. Brennan came all the way out from Valpo to help us, but I had missed a dosage because I was so busy trying to get stuff together for the move. And in the middle of the move, which is a high stress situation, which means all my triggers are right there, gonna happen. And because of that, I ended up having a really bad breakdown. I was kind of snapping at people, but I was telling people to get away from me because I didn't want to snap at them because they were all helping me. But it was one of those things where I think I explained in the second episode that unfortunately you guys didn't hear. When I get like that, it's like I know exactly how bad I'm being, but for some reason it's like my conscience can't seem to get it out. So I'm saying all the bad things that I don't want to say, or I'm reacting all the bad ways that I don't want to react, and I'm telling myself it's bad, and I feel bad for it. But because I feel so bad and I'm so prideful, I don't want to apologize for it because I'm already there. I'm already there. I don't want to back out now. So let's go in full force, and it just gets worse. Mm-hmm. It's a really weird, like, bus stop kind of area where I get stuck in my brain mentally, where I just can't get out of it. It's either you go full force, or you try and back out and you look like an idiot, or you look like you're crazy. That's usually how I get myself to stop. Is if I feel bad for what I'm doing and I just automatically apologize for what I just said. Think about it. If I snapped at you and said, "Oh, what the fuck was that?" and I go off on you, but then I'm like, "Wait a minute, I didn't mean that. I'm sorry." Blah, blah, blah. It just sounds crazy. Like you just got like a crazy extreme, and then I jump to another extreme. To me, I'm like, that looks so crazy. Why am I so nuts that I just don't
just own it?
So I just own it, and I'm just like, fuck it, I'm not gonna do it at all, and I'm just not gonna apologize at all, and I go in full force, which always makes it worse. Always. But I don't want to look crazy, so I look like an asshole. And so that was what I was struggling with the day that we were moving, and Brennan got the first, I think, out of our friendship for the last couple of years that we've had, I think that was his first glimpse into my real mental health without my medicine, and I felt horrible. It was really a terrible side of me that I try and keep hidden away, but you know, it happens. We all go through it.
Yeah, you don't have to feel bad for it. I mean, it happens.
It was a mess. That's all I know is it was a mess. But yeah, if that's what you're wondering, yeah, that's what happened. I hadn't taken my medicine. It was a high stress situation, and I know a lot of my triggers, and when we move, me and Sam never seem to see eye to eye, which is normal. But because I didn't take my medicine, Sam becomes a trigger. So a lot of things that she does tend to be triggers. And so I felt each one getting hit and me going further and further downhill until finally towards the end of the day when I just wanted to be done moving, I was like, fuck it, I'll just do it myself.
Yeah. Yep.
And it was, yeah. It was a long day. It went longer than it needed to. And it was just because it was so ill-prepared on my part that it just ended up being a breakdown. And we ended up pushing that move in for another day. I think I ended up finishing it over the weekend, which goes to show, even if I did have the breakdown, it did try to do it myself, it still wouldn't have worked. So when I get like that and I'm just like, oh, I'll just do it myself, it'll be fine if I do it that way, it still is usually a bad train of thought. But that's what...
It was nice, too, because, I mean, even though you were going through that, I saw how your family kind of took it in and how they reacted to it, and it was really nice to see that both your mother and your father,
because another part of it is when you're going through, that's a whole nother thing too, is because they're all going through, we all have our things. My entire family really does have mental health kind of go in it everywhere, but because we all have therapy, we've all been through the system, we all kind of know how it works. Especially like when I get like that, because I'm the one who's got the least experience in it. So everyone in the family knows that, and when I get like that, a lot of it is, when I say those things, nobody takes it seriously, which is good. I love it. I'm happy that they do that, which isn't an excuse for me to do it worse, but it helps me feel a little bit better that when I get like that and I can't help it, they know that when I get out of it, I'm going to apologize. That happens all the time. I'll snap, I'll freak out. Immediately the next day when I woke up, I'm like, hey, I'm sorry. Yeah, everything from yesterday I didn't mean it.
I saw it in the moment too, not to say like you're being out of hand, but they knew, like, by me saying they knew how to handle you, not like being mean about it, but they knew how to like deal with the situation and kind of what to do, what to say. And it was kind of nice to see that.
They absorbed it they really, when I'm throwing out those things, they absorb it, they intake it, and then they kind of like not move past it because they still deal with it. They kind of just be like, okay, well, think about it this way. They try and change my thought, basically. Because when I get like that, I'm zoned into one place, one direction, one way. They show me the other ways to do this, the other way to do that. They kind of try and help me change my thought pattern because I can't think straight that way. Usually, I'm usually stuck on one thing, and they show me all the different things that are around it, and that's what they do. They do it very well. My parents especially are really good at it because they've been doing it for years. Before I even knew that I was depressed, my parents knew how to handle me like that. So they've had experience just from dealing with me growing up. And then after the therapy and after we know it now, that they know this is a certain thing, they now, instead of it just being like, oh, he's just being a brat or just being out of hand, they're like, he's in a place right now and they'll fix it. So yeah, my family knows how to handle me there because they know I'm in that place. And now that we actually have identified the problem, they understand it even more, and they know kind of the tools that they need to do to help me and stuff like that. Same thing with my dad and I, because my dad is bipolar, but when he gets into a place, me and him feed off each other's energy really bad, and my dad's a really big trigger for me too. I'll get riled up really quickly with him, and he does the same with me. And so because he talks to his counselor, they're like, okay, your son is obviously a trigger. You need to talk to him differently so that he doesn't react. And then you have to try your best, even if he does react, to react a little bit better. And it's those kind of tools with the counseling that they go through that really helps me. It's why I need to finish my end of it and go to counseling as well. Now, as far as counseling goes, I did go to counseling for like 6 months, but it wasn't the counseling that I in my opinion, needed for what I'm looking for. Because everyone needs counseling differently. It's always different types of counseling that certain people need to help them with what their certain problems was. I thought because I'm a Christian and because of my faith that I would need to see a Christian counselor. In actuality, that wasn't the idea that I had of a Christian counselor wasn't the proper view. A Christian counselor helps you with your faith, your religion, and your marriage and that kind of stuff, which helped me and Sam a lot. I'm not talking bad about it at all. But what I was looking for out of my counseling was clinical counseling for my depression, how I should handle it, what are the tools that I need for it. Unfortunately, the Christian counselor didn't quite get to that place. It was more of marriage stuff to help me and Sam, which it helped. It was great. I loved it. But it wasn't what I needed or what I was looking for. What was the question that you were having not too long ago about the Christian counseling?
Well, because I didn't know that there was different kinds of counseling per se. And so when you said Christian counseling, it kind of rung a bell in my head to where the only thing I know religious wise is that, like you said, with the Catholics they do like confession, and that's kind of like the same bubble in my head that came to mind.
Oh, like you're saying that's kind of the same area that you're looking at it?
Because I'm not sure. I mean, because you're telling them what's going on, right? And then
yes and no.
Like a Christian counselor would tell you get more into your faith and do something.
Right. Here, let me explain a little bit. From what I understand about Christian was what you're or Catholics, what you were talking about confessions. That's more of like that's actually a part of the religion where you have to go to confessions to get rid of your sins. That's actually religious.
Okay.
That's like that's a religion thing. That's not anything about counseling. That's not them trying to better themselves. What the Christian counseling did for us and what it really entails is this really, really wonderful lady. She's great. It turned into more marriage counseling, but Christian marriage, Christian-based marriage. And a lot of it was reading the Bible, giving us the tools to rely on God more to keep our marriage strong and putting God in the middle of our marriage before we, gave into our anxiety and our depression, which helped. It really did. And it was just tools on how to handle those kinds of things as far as marriage fights, finance fights, all those things. But it was more marriage help than it was. It was more marriage help than it was clinical help, which is what I was looking for. But it was help nonetheless, and it helped me and Sam a lot.
So how is clinical help different from that then? Is it more focused on
clinical health
compared to...
Yes, clinical health, because of the way that it is, they identify the problem, which mine is depression. What they would do then is identify my thought pattern when I go through those kinds of things. When I go through a down spur or a riled up kind of anger moment, what they do is they identify my thought pattern through that, and then they give me the tools or give me ways to step out of that, handle it, or bring me out of those places. So if I'm getting depressed and being upset or sad about something, or I can't get myself out of this ditch of like, oh, my finances are bad, oh, my marriage is bad, oh, my life is bad, they give me the tools to think about certain things to get out of that. Okay. They give me a different thought pattern. They give me different ideas to work myself out of it. Then with like a riled up point where you identify my triggers, I avoid the triggers until I can handle the triggers. They really help you just really...
It goes more in depth.
In depth with the thoughts.
Yeah.
And the way that you think of things and the way that you handle things. Whereas Christian counseling is more of big picture idea and bringing God in the middle of it, because God can fix all. God is, it's really, I almost want to say that they almost don't identify depression and anxiety because God can fix it all, which I get and all, but that's a common problem in Christianity itself, is that they don't really identify depression because they don't see it as, oh, that's just you being down. God can fix it. There's no reason for you to be down type of thing, which is a struggle, which is why there's so much depression in Christianity. Because a lot of the old school way of thinking is, it's just you being down. When really it's a physical chemical imbalance that you cannot help.
So now you mentioned something kind of interesting. Do you see more of these kind of mental health issues in religions because of that?
The only religion that I can speak on is Christianity, and for me, I see it a lot in Christianity. Just for me in general. Because, for instance, my pastor at our church, he's depressed. Not like untreated depression, but he is dealing with and has worked through depression and is still to this day dealing with it. Because I think I remember telling you his daughter died, I think, last year or the year before.
Because I was at the service where he had talked about it.
Yeah. So my pastor's depressed, and not untreated or anything like that. He's been dealing with it and working with it for quite a while, and so me and him have talked about it a lot too. But he recently lost his daughter to alcoholism, and when he went through that whole spout of things, you could really see that he was struggling with it more, and it was very genuine. He's very open about it. And that's what I love about my church, is that we don't give into those kind of stereotypes, Though some of us has different views on it, we work through it together and we talk about those views. And so at that time when that all happened,
open. Have someone to,
and at that time it was very open. We all were helping him. We were all talking about it. And depression is a discussion in our church, and we've worked through it. And we've talked about how it's a physical chemical imbalance, so you can't say that there's no reason for you to be down. God can fix it all, which he can. Absolutely, he can cure depression. But it's also a physical thing that needs to be healed. Mm-hmm. It's not just a idea or an emotion. And so physical healing is different in Christianity, which is a whole different topic that we can talk about. But it's a different prayer. It's a different type of thing. And so with Christianity and the topic of depression, I think it's very, very, very common, because think about all the big pastors that are, mega pastors that have affairs and hurt people and take advantage of his leadership roles and stuff like that, and they hurt. Yeah, we won't talk about that. Joel Osteen and that stuff. That's a big one. But we're not gonna just think about those kind of pastors that don't necessarily always follow through with a pastor's identified role, quote unquote role, and so that in turn hurts people who put a lot of faith in those guys, mm-hmm. which then cause depression as well. It runs rampant in churches, I would say, and because of that view of, oh, God can fix it and just push it down, it'll go away type of thing, oh, God's got you covered, there's no reason for it type of thing, it just gets worse. It gets rampant. Suicide rates are high, divorces, all that stuff. It's one of the things why I have a problem with big capital C church, mm-hmm. because it makes the rest of the little churches, the real Christians, look bad. And that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother time, but I see them as two separate churches, almost two separate religions almost, because of how rigid that old school view is and how common it is in big churches and mega pastors and mega churches and stuff like that. And I guarantee you, when those mega pastors are out and about doing things, I know I'm getting on a tangent, but when they're out doing their thing, preaching these things, people aren't putting their faith, excuse the truck in the background, people aren't putting their faith in God at that point. They're putting their faith in that person, in that man, in that figure who's at the head of that church. Mm-hmm. And so when he gives into his natural humanity, because he's not perfect, but people see him as that, when he gives into that and has an affair, has a drug problem, whatever, people get hurt because they put their faith in the wrong thing. They put their faith in the human and not what he's trying to teach. So sometimes mega pastors, even though they're flawed, can teach a good message and try and bring people closer to God. And I'm sure they have a good place. They have good intentions, but almost guaranteed will always fail because they're on such a high pedestal, because they looked at with a stethoscope.
That's kind of interesting way, yeah.
But that's a whole that's a whole podcast that we could talk about that later. We'll hold on to that because I'm trying to get back to the mental health thing.
A little bit of a detour, but
yeah, a bit of a detour, but no. With the counseling thing, that's where I struggle with my counseling necessarily, is because of the I chose the wrong one off the bat, I guess, thinking that I was a Christian and I need to go to Christian counseling. It just wasn't kind of what I needed at the time. So now I'm struggling with trying to find a clinical counselor. But
so you think
that's hard to do.
Eventually you will do better in more of a clinical aspect of it.
Yes, 100%. I know that I will, because I need the tools to handle my thought process when it changes and gets out of my control.
Okay.
Because that's what it feels like a lot of times. It's really hard to explain, but it really feels like sometimes my thought patterns just gets out of my control. Now, I can't grab onto it sometimes.
And now with the goal of the therapy in that clinical way, is the goal of it to not, to find out what you need and then not go to therapy anymore? Or is it you want to continue to go no matter what?
Therapy is always kind of a continuous thing, but when it's in a situation like me, you want to go regularly, maybe once a week, once a week, once every 2 weeks type of thing, to get constant updates and check-ins so that you see if you're working on the things that you need to be working on and using the tools, see if there's something else you need to work on, see if something else came up. Because a lot of times when you're working on those things and being able to figure things out, something else will come up. Okay, something else that you didn't know. You discover things and stuff like that. But once you get to that place where you're like, I'm pretty confident in my mental health, I feel confident enough and strong enough in this that I can handle it right now with the help of medicine or without, then at that point, you still continue therapy, but it's spaced out a lot longer.
Okay.
6 months touch-ins, maybe a year, every 3 months, stuff like that. But you'll always keep going.
Okay.
Usually.
So it's usually continuous.
Yes, but when you're in the early stages, sometimes even halfway through, you go a lot just to make sure that you're getting better or that you're working through the things that you need to work through.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I understand that now. Okay.
Like my mom has been going to counseling for a while now, and she's still working through it because with marriage as well as mental health, pretty soon your counseling with just you individually turns into marriage counseling because your other half affects your mental state greatly. And so for my parents as well, my mom...
Before I forget, that's kind of something that society kind of looks down on too. Like, if you go to marriage counseling, something must be wrong.
It's bad. Yeah, I know. Me and Sam were talking about that so much when we started going to marriage counseling early on.
But it's the opposite.
It's very much the opposite. You are doing the best thing you can for your marriage.
You can go there if something is going wrong, but it's not always the case.
No,
right?
You go there so that you can learn how to properly communicate to your significant other what you want to do without hurting their feelings or talk about certain things. It's the best thing ever, I think, that every marriage should go through, especially when they start out. Because me and Sam, think about it. You know, we've been dating for 2-3 years. We know each other pretty well, but we don't know the ins and outs of each other's brains. You don't know how each other we think of things. So in marriage counseling, you talk about how you guys think of certain things, how you react to certain things, and how to better communicate certain things. Like a good example for this is me and Sam, when we get into fights, she always, or I can't say that exactly. I'm going to get into that why. But we don't say always or never or absolutes like that because that already is accusatory. So you always say, a lot of times you do this, or you seem to generally go to this pattern. So I don't ever say always or never anymore. I always try to say, you tend to do this a lot.
Now, how hard of a habit was that to break?
It's extremely hard, but that's why you constantly go to those counselings. So I think marriage counseling is great because it helps you communicate better. And communication is so freaking key in marriage, especially for me and Sam. And early on, we had a lot of fights about stupid shit. And with the counseling that we went through, we've actually gotten to get through a lot of those stupid fights now. We don't have those stupid fights now. Our fights are big fights, and it's usually because of me not taking my medicine. It's usually me. I know that, therefore I don't get upset as much anymore. It's just...
Well, I mean, fights are a part of it. You know, nothing's going to be perfect.
Never. And now that we have a daughter in the mix as well, yeah.
It adds a little more.
It adds more. You know, there's always... That's why life is constantly moving forward, so your therapy needs to constantly be moving with you through it. Okay. Whether it's marriage, whether it's your mental state, whatever counseling you're going through, stick with it because things always come up. Life keeps moving forward. You're going to always need someone to help you think on the outside. Think of a different perspective. Because your initial perspective, if it's from your gut or from a knee-jerk reaction, is most commonly not the best way to think about it or to see it or to react to it.
See, that's... Well,
the more you know.
Something new.
The more you know. It's something that I've learned in the short year and a half I've been dealing with this. My parents have been dealing with it much longer. And Sam has been through it. And I would say is on the other end of it. But even dealing with that, she's dealing with someone who's at a fresh start now. Yeah. And so now she's kind of seeing it from, this is how it used to be. And even still, she has to start going back to those places and trying to, think about it differently and help me through it. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times then, when she has to go back to that place, she starts to bring up her own old anxiety again. So now she has to go back and fix that as well. I'm telling you, it's really complicated. It's a mess, but it really is good to know these things. It's so important. Because if you meet someone on the street who is dealing with that, you need to know, how to handle them. They might be going through something. They might be doing this,
But I mean, not everybody's going to respond to the same thing. Right?
No, not always. Not always. It's always different. And that's why I think it's very important that people should take a class or at least one session with a counselor to talk about that. Because it's important to know that everyone is different. Mental health is all over the board. You might not know. You might not know you have it. You might not know what it is, why you are like that. But the brain is so complicated and so individual. It's important for people to understand that. And you can't just put a blanket statement on depression or on anxiety or on something like that. And you can't just, that person's crazy. Because they're probably not crazy. They're probably just dealing with something. It's...
I don't know. I think there's crazy people out there.
I mean,
but
but look at any psychopath in the past with killings. I guarantee you that there's something that's happened to them that's made them that way, that changed their thought pattern in such a way that when they didn't get help, it just spiraled out of control.
Yeah, well, if you're going into that, that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, that's a serial killer
if you really
podcast
want to talk
episode.
about that, I mean, that's an entirely different thing. But I can see that.
But just think about it. You see it as crazy because it's not normal. But to them, going through a lifetime of it, it's normal to them. They're not crazy. They're normal. That's how the brain is so individual.
Yeah.
So I think it's neat.
I wasn't saying that as in like people going through it are crazy. I was just saying like.
Oh no! It's just...
I'm sure there's some crazy people out there.
But I think we're gonna wrap up. I think that was. I don't know how quickly it was. I know we were talking fast, but we got into a lot. I would love to get more in depth with this, but I think that was really good for us being back, working together in the new house, new podcast, everything. I had a really good time. I don't know how long we've been, but I'm gonna wrap up here. We are gonna call it a day because we got things to do. We gotta head back to my house right now. So guys, again, if you enjoyed, please like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. Please email us for questions and content. I would love to get segments in here, like questions that you guys have about different topics. We would love to talk about it. Please do so. Email us at the rtupodcast@gmail.com. And we will check you guys out next week, all right? Peace.
Deuces.
That was good.
See?
Real.
Something new every day.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.